Good morning, everybody, and happy Memorial Day. So, thank you for getting all your work in. Did an excellent job doing that, and it looks like everything went pretty well, a few minor teething troubles aside. So, hopefully, you will have ironed those out now, and we're all set moving forward. Thank you also for drawing my attention to the timestamp problem. I don't know what was going on there, but I've changed it to Eastern Standard Time. So, unless you're in California, you will now be submitting your work at the real 11:59. So thank you for drawing my attention to that. A couple of you have asked about commenting. Well, commenting starts this week now that we have some work to comment on. So everybody needs to leave 3 comments a week. So choose some work. It may be maybe you want to comment on those people who wrote in the same category as you, and maybe you want to kind of indicate some places where their work was perhaps took on some things that you didn't consider, or maybe you want to offer some suggestions for ways in which they could expand and improve their work. Maybe you just want to pick things at random. Maybe you want to pick an entry that really piqued your interest and you want to know a bit more about. The comments have to be more than just yay, good job, or you suck. It's got to be thoughtful and substantive, and you have to consider what you're writing. So it's as if you were offering a response to a presentation in class, right? And also the aim of these comments is to get the idea of students engaging with each other and engaging with the material, so that this isn't just a completely sort of disembodied and alienated experience. I want to get the sense that people know who's in the class, who's talking to them, get a sense of their personalities through their work and through their comments. So please engage in that spirit, and make sure you start to do those comments now, beginning this week. Okay, so moving on to the coursework for this week. So last week we talked about ways of distancing yourself from these ideas of common sense and your preconceptions and your prejudices. Now, prejudice is such an ugly word these days, but if we look at it closely, it means simply to prejudge something. Now, that can, of course, mean bigotry and discrimination in its most malignant form, but it also means just to make judgments based on where you start, and these can be quite benign sometimes. You can make benign prejudicial judgments, but they're still prejudged and not critically reasoned and thought through at any detail. So our aim as critics is to move beyond the superficial and to try to get to the deeper level of meaning. So we need to have some self-awareness. We need to know where we come from and where we're starting and what our prejudices are before we can kind of strip away that superficial layer and understand our own critical reasoning to get at the kind of deeper structures embedded in a cultural artifact, whether it be a work of art or whether it be a literary text. So by watching John Berger's Ways of Seeing last week, you see the kind of really, I think, very smart and stylish way that John Berger showed us that great works of art, we often see them through these sort of prejudicial eyes. We see them as these great works, and we're told from children that these are masterpieces worthy of our reverence and that they are sort of great objects of great aesthetic beauty. But John Berger kind of reintroduces them to this concept, the context of their construction, and he shows us how certain ideologies are at work, how certain conceptions are at work. That is, the conceptions of power and wealth, conceptions of the male gaze and the objectification of the female body. And he says, just look again and see how ideology is at work at these paintings. See how the operation of culture is at work in these paintings, and see it embedded there. Okay. Now, John Berger was a real pioneer of bringing that kind of reading to the general public through his television program and his books. And I want you to kind of take that as an object lesson in how to distance yourself from those things that you thought you've just kind of received in education in the ether, and begin to always have your own critical reasoning at a place that you can kind of interrogate for itself, right? So you can move forward having stripped away your prejudgments and think get to that deeper level, saying what's actually at work here, what's actually going on, what's at stake essentially. So now that we've begun to hold this idea of common sense at arm's length, what are we going to replace it with? Well, in the next 5 weeks in this course, I'm going to introduce you to certain critical lenses and literary critical methodologies that will permit you to read texts through specific critical lenses, right? And you can adapt these to your own reading as you see fit and as your interests dictate. Now, the first is structuralism and post-structuralism. Now, these have been extremely influential ways of reading, and really literary criticism went through something of a revolution from the 1960s through to the 1980s, thanks to a loose collection or collective of French theorists, by and large, who introduced the world to these ideas. Now, it begins with the insight that language is essentially an arbitrary system, which is to say that language is not given, does not sort of come from the heavens and speak the true, sort of have a true anchoring in the world around us, but rather that we as humans have developed this kind of system of manipulating our breath and making noises out of our mouths, and we attach arbitrary signs to the things around us, right, that more or less adequately describes the world and our experience, but that language itself has no true anchor in external reality. There's a disconnect between external reality and the words I'm saying, right? This is an arbitrary system of animal sounds. It's not a true resonating description or articulation of the things out there, right? So this is the first insight of structuralism, is that language is arbitrary, and it's just created as a way of kind of explaining what's around us, and it's an inadequate tool, but it's the best tool we have. Now, having loosened the ties between signification and meaning, structuralism then goes on, begins to interrogate the way and undermine those ideologies that insist on sort of absolute meaning in order for them to operate. Now, these would include concepts such as God, concepts such as the state, concepts such as monarchy, right? These are all ideologies that demand a kind of absolute anchor in some fixed, external, and transcendental reality, right? Now, if language is arbitrary, and language is just this system of exhalations that animals make, human animals make, in order to kind of try and articulate their experience, then those kind of concepts that demand absolute loyalty and demand a kind of absolute transcendental, fixed, and immutable authority are also going to be arbitrary, right? Because how do we construct them? We construct them through rhetoric, which is to say we have a rhetoric of God, we have the language of God, we have a rhetoric of the state, we have a rhetoric of monarchy, and all these things are kept in place by appealing always to this higher order. What if this higher order is also arbitrary? Because what's it rely on? It relies on language. How else do we express it? How else is it explained? So I won't say too much more now, because this will end up being a very long video, but there's quite a lot of reading to do today, so this week, so I encourage you to get started. But you will see that structuralists are coming from this angle. They're coming from this angle that they've broken the connection between reality and language, and they've replaced it with this idea that language is actually this rather sort of fluid, arbitrary, and fluctuating system of meanings. And then they've gone to take that one step further and say, well, maybe society in general relies on these, having put in place these kind of arbitrary structures in order to allow us to generate meaning. So maybe we come to our life, maybe we come to society through these kind of arbitrary structures that we've allowed to put in place to give us a kind of conceptualization of the world around us. So do the reading and decide for yourself, see the assignments, and good luck. So I'll be speaking to you later this week.